Hey, everybody, welcome to another episode of This, That, and the Other. I'm your host, Magic, and this is season 5, episode 4, I do believe. Yes, I think that's right. I have to ask myself that every show. But anyway, welcome to those of you who are watching or those of you that may be tuning in after the live broadcast. We do have a guest on the show today that we're going to talk with, but beforehand, I wanted to touch on an issue that's been on the threads and the forum, and that I don't know if I'd say an issue, but it's a topic, and that is basically the concern that has been brought to light about player performance regarding the substitution rate. I know many of the coaches actually use a 90 to 95% substitution rate to keep their guys, their starters, fresh and keep them in the ball game. And others have indicated that there's no drop off, even if you run the starters down to 60% substitution rate. So essentially, they're playing at 60% of their anticipated level. Right now, there are a couple guys that are doing some analysis, if you will, to see and get some definitive information regarding that setup. So definitely encourage anybody that has some insight or some knowledge in that regard to holler at me or post it on the board and let everybody know what you found out. If you're willing to share, which I'm sure many of those that have that information would be willing to share, or if you're undertaking a trial at it and trying to see for yourself how it works, share those results. I know there's quite a few folks that would be interested to see how that works out for you. Um, Me personally, I've really not seen a difference. I really haven't dug real deep into the play-by-plays, but for the most part, I've lost running 60% and lost running 95%. So it really hadn't helped me in any way, shape, or form. But anyway, let's go ahead and bring on our guest. Let's get Russ on here, aka the Romper. Russ, welcome to the show.
Thanks a lot, man. I really appreciate you having me on. I especially appreciate the advice you gave me in the forums recently. So that was really nice to see.
Oh, anytime, anytime. There's a lot of us that'll reach out and provide insight, and it's really neat because you get a wide spectrum of answers when you ask a simple question sometimes, and it all is dependent on everybody else's experience, and some have had more experience than the others. But what it does is it really gives you uh, an awareness to what you may see in your own performance or your own setups or whatever the case may be, is in fact something that somebody else has probably already seen as well. So very few things in this game are anomalies. Somebody has seen it happen somewhere more times than not. So definitely people out there are often willing to share their information, their experience, and encourage everybody to ask. Well, let's go ahead and get the show started. We're going to do this like we used to do the original interviews on the show. So basically, we're going to open it up and allow you to share some information about yourself, such as who you are, where you're from, anything that you're willing to share, career wise, sports wise, whatever the case may be.
All right, appreciate that. So, I got into this game a long time ago, and the funny thing is I made it to a championship game one time, and it was the day my 11-year-old daughter was born. Because
Oh,
I remember,
wow.
yeah, I remember looking at it as I was going into the hospital that morning because I had to go away and I had to come back for something, and I was going in to like hold her that morning, and I was like, man, I lost this championship, and that was it. I was done playing the game until like last month, and I was sitting in my office here, and I was a little bit bored, and I was like, I wonder what that game's all about. Went back, signed up, and now I'm back like never stopped. It's awesome. What's really cool though is that my daughter loves sports. So a couple of years ago, we moved from Pennsylvania down here to Florida, and we started liking all the local sports teams. The Bucks got Tom Brady, the Lightning went to the finals a few years in a row.
Yeah.
I have my jersey on because we were just at the Rays game today. The Rays are a really good team.
Awesome.
And so we started really bonding over sports because especially with the COVID lockdowns, we were watching a lot of sports on TV together.
Yeah.
And so my daughter started loving sports. She started playing fantasy football. She won a league championship. And so she asked me one day, Daddy, what are you doing? And I showed her. She goes, well, can I have a team too? So I helped her start a little team, and I just kind of helped her pick a team that I thought she could maybe win the conference in. And she ended up going undefeated and winning 2 playoff games. And
Wow.
she I think she won 16-1 her first season. And of course I helped her, but it was like really fun for her.
Yeah,
And,
absolutely.
and so now she has 2 teams, and we wake up every morning and we talk about our recruiting, we talk about how our teams did, we talk a little smack if we play each other, and it's just a lot of fun. And then recently my wife started saying, "What are you guys talking about all the time?" So my wife got a team, and
Oh, wow.
she picked up Huntington, and I helped her, and she
That's
got
a
to the
good team. Yep.
third round of the playoffs in her first season.
Yep.
So now we got a family here that loves this game, and we talk about it literally every day.
Well, we'll have to set up a show where we get all 3 of you on, and because I mean that's unusual. I've heard of brothers and fathers and sons and brothers and sister and stuff like that, but to have mother, father, and daughter, that's unique in of itself. It'd be pretty cool if you guys would be interested. Let me know, and
that would be cool. It's a lot of fun because so my daughter's more like me. Like we can talk smack back and forth, and we don't take it personally.
Sure.
My wife's a bit more sensitive, so when we start ganging up, like, "Oh, you got blown out today," she's like, "Stop it." So, but that's how it is. So but yeah, it was really cool because I hadn't played this game in so long, and I was looking back at my old teams, and I was just like, man, I really sucked some of these seasons. And let me tell you how I got back into this, and it really lit my fire. So I was just going through YouTube videos. I was like, best way to run an offense on What If Sports, right? Or GridIron Dynasty. And I found this guy, you probably know of him, named Smokey Bones. Have you heard of Smokey Bones? He had a video up on exactly how he ran his offense and how he set it all up. So I basically just did exactly what he did, made a couple modifications, and I just started killing teams using his offense. And then I forgot it, and I went back to look at it again, and I guess he had taken it down, because what I noticed was the offense that I learned from his video, I was coming up against other teams that were human controlled that seemed to be running the exact same offense. So I think a lot of people saw that video, and I think they were running that offense. So that was what really got me excited again, because with the offense I learned from him, I started killing teams like really bad. And I was like, wow, now I can be good at this, because a lot of my early seasons, I was like 8-5, I wasn't making the playoffs and stuff. And now, I don't know, I have a really good time. Now I still have problems with good human controlled coaches. Like I still have difficulties. Like, how do I stop a great offense? I try everything I can, and they're still destroying me. But I based on what I read on the forums, I think that's just normal when players are much better than yours, right?
But when you figure it out, let me know.
Yeah.
There are quite a few coaches who just seem to have that little extra insight. I don't know if it's from an analytical aspect or if it's from an X's and O's thing or what exactly it is. But, there's a handful of coaches that you predominantly see year in and year out winning the national championships, regardless of what level. You go back and look, and you're like, wow, this guy was only here for 3 years and he won a national championship, and he picked up an all-sim team that was 0-11 the year before, 0-13, whatever the case may be, the year before. And, so they may share some insight. They may share some portion of their strategy, if you will, or their game setup. But I doubt if they'll ever just be an open box and spill everything they know about the game, even if they were to leave. Because like you, who knows what the future holds? You may come back. I know I departed for a couple, 4 or 5 years, and then came back to the game as well. And we see a lot of influx in new membership about the time football season actually stops. A lot of people think it's when the season starts, but when football is over, that's when we see a couple new names on the boards and in the conferences, because people are looking to get that extra football fix. And this is one of the better platforms to do that. I've tried a lot of them out in the past, but by far, this is one that provides probably the most realism in managing a team, and the most competitiveness, because you're not playing a computer all the time. You're playing somebody different, you're playing an actual human. And no two games are ever the same, it seems, and that's one of the things that really draws me to it. Not, I come from a history of playing football in high school, and the base team when I was in the Air Force and stuff like that. What about yourself as far as sports background? Did you come up playing ball in school?
I did. So I played at a little high school in Pittsburgh, and I played football. I was a tight end and a linebacker. And then I went to a little school. You might have heard of him. You probably seen him in the game, actually. Robert Morris.
Yes.
So I was there. They have a pretty cool story. So they started a football team late into them being a college. They were predominantly a soccer team. And Joe Walton, who used to coach the New York Jets, and he was the offensive coordinator for the Steelers, he came out of retirement to help Robert Morris start the program. So Robert Morris was Joe Walton was my college football coach.
Wow.
And and it was 1AA non-scholarship. So they couldn't give out. I had an academic scholarship, but I didn't have a football scholarship. But I'll tell you what, he ran that thing, man, like an NFL team. Like it was a really, really good lesson in football. Playing for Coach Walton, and we won a bowl game when I played there. It was cool. It was like just a little local bowl game in the Western Pennsylvania area. So that's what I did. That's my history with football, and I've loved it ever since. I've been to you can't see it because it's dark in my office here tonight, but my team was always the Steelers, and I actually went and saw the Steelers win 2 Super Bowls. I saw them win Super Bowl 40 and Super Bowl 43. So I literally lived my sports fantasies. I got to play college football for an NFL coach, and I got to go to the Super Bowl and watch.
That is too cool. Yeah, that is too cool. Definitely some good memories there.
Absolutely.
I had a friend in early part of high school named Stanley Cusco, and he was from Pittsburgh. And if you dare say anything negative about Pittsburgh, you got a mouthful of fist. he was a diehard Steeler. He loved anything that was black and gold. He was all about it. And me growing up in Virginia, I was a Redskin fan. And the two teams didn't really play against each other all that much that I recall. So we didn't have a lot of time to jaw each other or give each other crap. But he was definitely successful in the mid to late 70s, multiple Super Bowls and some tremendous talent, big Rocky Blyer fan. Still get a kick out of Terry Bradshaw doing his antics on TV and doing some of the things he does. And of course, we recently lost Franco, and I've had the pleasure of being in the airport there and seeing the statue of him with the Immaculate Reception. What do you think about that? Was it a catch?
You know what? I think so. So recently we took a trip back to Pittsburgh for my nephew's birthday, and the Steelers opened up a Steelers Hall of Fame. And they had, it's like a mini NFL Hall of Fame. And one of the things you can do is they had this recording studio where you could call really cool plays from the past. So we called the Immaculate Reception play.
Oh, wow.
So I was sitting there with my nephew on my lap, and we were calling it, and we were having a good time. And I think it was a catch, but of course I'm kind of biased a little bit, but it was cool growing up in Pittsburgh. And a cool thing about Steelers players is they always seem to be really involved with the community. Like, I used to go to, at least one Penn State game a year just because my son liked to do that. And we were just walking around the Penn State campus, and Franco was there, and he stopped and talked to people. He's a really nice guy. Rocky Blyer was around town. The only one we didn't really see much was Jack Lambert didn't really show up unless it was like a 50-year anniversary. I guess he was he ended up going out and being like a park ranger and living in the wilderness, I heard. And that's just what Jack Lambert wanted to do. Yeah. So that was pretty interesting. One of my best memories though about the Steelers is my son went to a football camp one summer, and it was over a holiday weekend, and they took us into the Steelers facilities as part of that camp. And they were showing us all the rooms where they do the game plans and where Coach Tomlin would work and stuff like that. Cool. And it just happened that Dan Rooney was sitting in his office on a holiday weekend while we were in there doing the tour. And we peeked in, and I said, "Mr. Rooney?" He goes, "Hi, how you doing?" Shook my kid's hand, sat him on his lap, took pictures with my kids. How cool is that? It's just like the Steelers family, man, is I don't know how other teams are, but they were just so good to the community, so good to my kids, and we just have a lot of good memories being Steelers fans.
That's one of the things that really keeps that fan base solidified is when you've got a team or an organization that is just not available on Sunday. They make themselves available during the week in community activities, like you said, or meet and greets or what have you. And that, you're right. There's not a lot of teams that you hear about doing things like that. But
Right.
it's great to get that firsthand experience, especially when, that the kids are involved and your kids, get to sense that glory from the days gone by, getting to see some of the names of yesteryear that were really an integral part of the success of the program. In this case, the Steelers, the Lynn Swans, the Franco Harrises, the Rocky Blyers. It's
Right.
incredible. Now you've got Penn State as a goal of yourself to get to in this game one of these days, I take it?
Not me, my daughter though. My 11-year-old daughter, she loves Penn State. That was her college of choice when we root for teams. I actually grew up like in the University of Miami. I used to just love like how brash they were and how they would blow teams out. They were my team when I was a kid. My goal was to be a Miami Hurricane. Obviously, I didn't accomplish that goal, but so someday, I just got a Division I team for the first time, and I got my butt kicked.
Ohio.
That's how we started talking. I got my butt kicked in my first round of recruiting because I didn't understand that like all the other levels, you just have a whole bunch of undecideds, and you attack those undecideds, and then you can get them relatively quick. Well, this time you had to fight for every single one. So I guess my goal is to do really good and win some conference championships at Ohio and maybe get another step up and then eventually maybe get Miami if that guy ever retires. I don't know if he will, but
there's coaches that you look down the list in the history tab and you're like, my God, this guy's been at the school for 70 what if sports years. And it's just like, dude, what is there left to accomplish at that point? But look at Myers and Mike and St. Olaf. I mean,
every single world, he's like the best guy.
Yeah, he that was his goal, and hats off to him. I'm sure he'll come back on the show one of these days here soon. I'll have to tap him on the shoulder and remind him, I guess. But he's got it, for D3. He's got it locked up. He knows what it takes at D3, and that's the neat thing about this particular game. And you mentioned the recruiting aspect, going from D1 AA or even D2 to up through the ranks, and then you land at D1A and you're like, wow, this is a totally different game. And there's so many games within this game, if you will. The recruiting at D3 is not what it is at D2, which isn't what it is at D1A, and there's an entirely different aspect at D1A. And the neat thing is, regardless of what world you're in, those aspects could be different depending on the world you're in. Right. Because if you found out with D1A and the world you have Ohio, if I remember correctly, there's not a whole lot of human coaches in that Division I, or fewer than there's usually in Division I.
Right.
And which means that the Sim AI teams are just spread all over all the recruits that are, usually available or somewhat easier to get because you're battling another human from time to time, and other humans tend to give up, whereas the Sim AIs, they just keep battling away and taking your money and taking your money.
Right.
And, you go to another division in another world and it's totally opposite. So it's really interesting how this game is set up, given that it's 7 or 11 different worlds, I think, to where, depending on what world you're in, you can have a totally different experience, and in your case with your family, the three of you could be at the exact same school with the exact same record in 3 different worlds and have totally different experiences. And that brings a lot of challenges to the game for people as well.
It's interesting you bring up Myers because we all look at him in Division III and be like, my God, how will we ever beat this guy, right? They actually both my daughter and my wife in the last round of the playoffs played him. My daughter lost 71-0, and my wife lost 29-10. And so, of course, my wife's like, "Oh, Myers only beat me by like 19.
Right.
He beat you by 71, right?" And I'm like, "Well, I'm the only guy he hasn't beat. Well, so I'm the only guy I haven't played."
Hey, you got to hang your hat where you can.
Yeah, that's right. But I'll tell you what, like it's just amazing. Some of the records you see some of these guys putting up. Like
Yeah.
when I noticed he was in every world, I was like, that takes some dedication, man. Holy crap, you know?
Well, he mentioned when he was on the show that it's pretty much just click and go. He's got his system down, he's got his routine down, and he manages, all those teams very effectively and very efficiently. And he knows, his recruiting area. He knows the other coaches in that particular world, or gets to know them very quickly. And he's got it down to a science. He pretty much runs all the teams the same way, and he gets it done. Why change it if it's working?
Right. We weren't discussing though. Like, I wonder if that gets boring to him though, because he's so good now. I wonder if it's even a challenge. I wonder if it's fun. Did he mention that?
Yeah, he still enjoys it, but from what he does is he's more goal oriented. So he'll set up goals for himself. And I don't want to put words in his mouth, but the various conversations we've had, even away from the show, is he didn't share all the goals. But he said, there's certain goals that he wants to achieve. And now, whether that may be, 300 national championships, 500 national championships, winning 7 in a row in every world, whatever the case may be, it's more than just the play of the game for him that keeps him, interested and doing it over and over and over. He sets up little goals. And I can only imagine, he may say, between now and Christmas, I want to win 9 national championships.
Right. Yeah, I would be ecstatic to win 1 between now and Christmas.
Well, when you win that one, you definitely got to let everybody know, because it's a euphoric moment, and it's one of those things that you always remember the first one, they say, but it is true. You always remember that first one.
Who was your first one? Do you have many?
My first one was at I can see the team now. It starts with an E. It's green. It was in Division 3, and it was one of those. I took over for a team that was already established and doing well, and I think it was trying to remember the guy's name that had it. I can't remember now for the life of him, but he had Endicott going where they needed to go, pretty much every year. And I won back-to-back national championships with the program and moved up to D2 to take on a good school. And that was probably within the first 4 or 5 real human years of playing, because initially I wasn't focused on winning national championships or even having that as a goal. I was more focused on taking a team I liked or one that I rooted for and just letting them win the conference and focus more locally in that area, or trying to get to Virginia Tech, since I was from Virginia. And, now I'm living in Arkansas, and, then of course it was, getting to Arkansas. So it wasn't until many years later that I realized there's a whole lot more to this game than just taking over a team and throwing them out there every night to play ball. There's deep involvement in game planning and scouting your opponents and all that. And we have to remember too, the game has changed quite a bit since I've started playing it, which was back in 2005, I think it was.
Wow. That's a long time ago.
So, yeah, that's a real long time ago. Yeah. And then it was mainly a watered down version of what we have now. It's more similar to D3 than anything we've got above at that level. Mm-hmm. And through the updates, they incorporated the ability for Division 2 and above to have specialized positions, which then made it even more intriguing and a little more difficult, because now you had to be able to compartmentalize your recruiting. Do I recruit running backs that can also block, or do I recruit specifically, running backs for running the ball and then focus on guys that can just block, and I don't care how fast they are. So that led to a whole new aspect of recruiting that I had to learn and get a better understanding of. And then throughout the updates that we've had up to where we are now, different things have come into play, like being able to change positions with players. Now we can go up to, I believe it's 7, where before it was like 4 or 5. I can't recall exactly. And, that affects recruiting or how you recruit, given the fact that your particular focus is to get maybe a tight end to be a fullback. Right. So, if you're weak in one area and you're recruiting for the intention of making a position change to get you some good backups, if, at best, you got to be careful because you only had 4 or 5, whatever it was then. Now we've got 7 that you can change. It opens the door up a little bit more. So you're seeing some more of that. So over the years, it's changed quite a bit in various aspects. And, we've heard for the last 2 or 3 years that we've got a brand new version coming down shortly. And yeah, I think my grandson may see it when his grandson plays. I don't know.
Right.
I know guys are busy and they're behind the scenes plugging away at an antiquated piece of programming that they're trying to breathe life into. So hopefully it'll happen before too long. But you've got the name TheRomper. So tell us how that came about. Is there any specific meaning to that?
I don't know if you ever heard of this game called Front Office Football. Have you ever heard of it or played about it? Yeah. So I used to play that game when I remember Jim Gindin. He developed that game, and he used to actually be a developer that would talk to us on the message boards, which was really cool.
Okay, yeah, I didn't interact with him, but yeah.
Yeah, he was a very quirky guy. He wasn't really a sports fan that much, but he was a very good programmer. Mm-hmm. And so they had some of the first online competition that you could do. He made a game where you could, everybody could compete against each other. It was very rugged. Like you had to upload a file and run the file down. It was crazy, but it worked. And so I was talking smack in this board one time, and I was like, I romped all over your team. And so I decided to just make that my screen name, TheRomper, because I romped all over your team. So anything football related ever since then, I've just called myself TheRomper. And I don't know if you noticed, if you see my wife in any of these worlds, I forget which one she's in, she made hers Miss Romper, kind of like Miss Pac-Man. So
carrying on the family tradition.
Yeah, it's cool. We have a really good time with it. We do.
So you've got a couple teams at D3, some at D2, and we mentioned the Ohio team there at D1A. Mm-hmm. Which of those, you've been to all 4 divisions. Which do you find the most enjoyable for you?
So far I've really liked D2 the best because it's a definite step up from D3. But there's more strategy, there's more game planning, but it's not so hard that when I stepped up to 1AA, it was harder to recruit because the Division I teams would come down and take my players, right? Yeah. So Division II just seemed to be like that sweet spot where it was nice and enjoyable, but it wasn't too hard.
Now, is there one particular place you like to play, like a particular region?
I like the Northeast just because I'm from the Northeast, so I recognize a lot of the names. But I also noticed that I started looking in the different worlds, and I noticed there's certain names of schools that tend to do good in each world, and I always just assumed it was because it was recruit very fertile recruits in that area, kind of like I always noticed Pace, I always noticed West Virginia Wesleyan. Places up there in the Northeast, and then strangely enough, I noticed Humboldt State, or just there's always those ones that you see them in every world and they're good again, right? Valdosta State, they're always good.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah, and so but yeah, I'm kind of partial to the Northeast just because I'm like you. I like to look at the names of the schools that I know and be able to play against those teams.
Yeah, exactly. And unfortunately for me, I got my degree from East New Mexico University. And ENMU is out there in the middle of desolation when it comes to recruiting. Right. I mean, people say, yeah, West Texas is, rough for recruiting. Well, go even further west into New Mexico, and you'll find that there's maybe one recruit within 360 every, 10 years or so. It's just
right. Yeah,
there. So that was one of my, desires initially was, hey, I'm going to go ahead and take ENMU to win a conference championship. And that's when I learned that, for me, now I'm sure there's other guys out here who could take ENMU to a national championship in a matter of no time. But for me, the only way I could get that team to be even semi-successful was through recruiting. It wasn't necessarily that I out game planned somebody, but I was able to, for whatever reason, get some really good recruits. And that is extremely tough to do there. But you mentioned like Humboldt State and Valdosta. Valdosta sits at the top of Florida. So any D2 team that wants to go into Florida after recruit, well, they're closer to Valdosta State. So you're going to get a battle there if that coach particularly wants somebody that is available. Humboldt, you've got the entire West Coast practically.
Right. Yeah.
You've got a lot of leeway there. But I've been at both. And the downside to Humboldt is there are years where it can get pretty rare out there for recruits as far as quality recruits or recruits that have worthwhile work ethic, if that's what you're looking for. So you do have to put in some distance recruiting. And that actually helped me learn a little more patience when it comes to distance recruiting rather than, going the first 2 or 3 cycles of the recruiting period. And this guy that's, 2,500 miles away still has nobody on him and he's a quality recruit. And I'm like, man, let me just go ahead from Humboldt and reach out to, the East Coast and grab this guy and dump a bunch of money on him. Well, you got to understand that a lot of these cycles, recruiting cycles, the first couple that, when we start getting some feedback, they're people at work. And a lot of these coaches, don't have the luxury of hitting the recruiting board, at lunchtime or immediately after. And, if the guy doesn't or gal doesn't get home till after a cycle, or 2, it may be the 3rd or 4th cycle before they actually get a chance to put some money on a recruit because, the first one, they're probably going to send an AC to check him out and get a scouting report. And then they're going to dump some money on it. Well, who knows, by the time they get home, dump an AC scout on a recruit, they may not check it until the next morning and find out, I want this guy. So now, you're at Humboldt and you've got a guy on the East Coast green and, you've sent him 3 or 4 campus visits. That cleared you out, $6,000-$7,000. And then this guy who's right next door has decided, I want to get this guy, and boom, he's gone. You
just like that.
Money. So I've learned to be patient when it comes to long distance recruiting. And, but at the same time, I've also learned that if the guy's in your area and you want him, get him, because that'll keep you from having a potential battle by somebody who doesn't mind reaching out, or somebody that's got a little bit of a war chest built up to go out there and make you spend money to get a guy that's in your backyard, which it happens. It happens to me quite a bit. I enjoyed the lack of a better term, the scouting or the, looking over the spreadsheets or whatever I'm using to look at the recruits, because it's like Christmas. You never know what's going to be at the next line of data that you look at or the next recruit you look at. So it's almost like a present. What do you use, if you don't mind sharing, as far as like spreadsheets or your analysis to gather recruit information?
I don't use really any tools because I saw there was a tool that everybody used to use and then it stopped working. So I couldn't find a way to use that tool. So I just all I did was just read the message boards and looked at best advice. And I kind of just use the tools that are available in the game. So, my strategy is usually I'll pick, maybe 10 guys at each position that I need. And then I'll pick like one of each position I need, and I'll make them my top priorities, and I'll go after them hard as soon as I see a scouting report. And then I'll keep on kind of rotating them through to, okay, this guy's my priority, this guy's my priority as things change, So I'm sure I'm not doing it the most efficient way, but it's worked for me. I've had some pretty good recruiting classes. I've had probably, since I've been back in this, 4 or 5, top 5, top 10 recruiting classes. So, what I'm doing is, it's just my way, but it seems to be working okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And if it works for you, more power to each and every one of us that have those little ways of doing it. I know years ago, Maddie's dad had a huge spreadsheet which tracked the progress, the annual growth, the all that stuff. And you can really get into the weeds to where this game basically takes over your life. What you've got, even with some of these tools, because you get tasks or you get data saturated. I know Ebzimity's got a tool out now, the analyzer, that will actually show you the analytics in the game matchup that's been played. It allows you to download recruits from the website, and it's a really neat tool. And I've mentioned it several times in some of the email or site mails I've exchanged between folks. If you're not aware of that, I definitely recommend looking into it.
What is it called? What is the name of the tool?
I can send you the information. It's
okay.
Eb Zimini. Yeah, he's got it. And matter of fact, you can probably get it faster by going through the forum advanced search and looking for analyzer.
Okay.
And by doing that, you'll come up to a thread where he's updated it quite a bit. I mean, he stays pretty active with it, and it's a tremendous tool. It'll actually show you the recruit is in relationship to other coaches, humans, and it'll show you their distances. It actually shows you when you're doing your recruit search, if you've got the recruit in your summary on your recruiting page, it'll show up green if he's in your favor, or yellow if you're in a battle with him. And I think it's blue if you've got him just on your summary, somebody you may be interested
right.
in.
That's really cool.
Or whatever. So when you're looking at, DBs, you do a DB search, it's color coded, so you can see the guy instantly and see, who's favoring you or whatever the case may be. A lot of guys have spreadsheets where they dump that information to. It's a variety of tools out there. So definitely give them all a try, any ones that you run across. And I'm sure there'll be some that are easier to use than others. You'll find that some provide the information you want in the manner you want more so than others. So there's a couple, 2 or 3 out there. And of course, we can't forget Bob Hazelwood with his GD reports. I'm sure you're familiar with that.
Oh yeah. Those are awesome, man. I love those.
Yeah. And a lot of people, and I get a kick out, they're like, man, I had the #1 recruit class, 4 years in a row, but I can't get into playoffs. Well, it's because that class, that information that Bob's tool dumps and downloads and provides you is based on, the formulas that he uses. Plus it's based on the way those recruits are today. It doesn't take into consideration a future as far as work ethic and as far as his projections, as far as, his potentials. None of that is taken into consideration. So, you may have the #1 class today because all the cores are high, but all their work ethic sucks and are all very low potential players. And, they get kicked in the mouth as we go year to year to year. But
Right.
It's still a cool tool to look at. I enjoy it. It's a good gauge. I use it predominantly just to go back and see how the players have grown, because when you click on your page, for instance, your school, and you can see your recruiting class and you see your entire team, you can click on an individual's name and it shows you, where that player was at the end of that recruiting cycle and the subsequent recruiting period, rather. So you can see where he was when he first signed on as a freshman. And then the next year when the sophomore class came on board, or the season rolled over, you can see how
Right.
that recruit matched out. So that's a pretty neat thing to look at as well. And, with all the guys that provide tools, I definitely recommend everybody, throw them some money here and there. They've got some PayPal and all that kind of stuff on there too, because they do provide a service that a lot of us enjoy. And, Lord knows I can't figure that stuff out. I don't know how to program. I have a hard time setting my clock.
That's awesome.
Microwave flashes at me all day long.
I'm the same way with the microwave.
It's just crazy. But as far as playing the game goes, what are one of your primary goals that you really want to achieve now that you've come back to the game before you hang up your coach's hat?
Yeah, I really want to win a national championship. I've figured out, how to win conference championships. I mean, it's pretty easy formula. You just find a conference with a strong team and some weak teams, and you can consistently win conference championships doing that. And I also want to be able to, match up with solid human coaches and know that I'm going to be competitive, because
Right. Yeah.
there's games right now where first and second round of the playoffs, I'm competitive. I get into the third round, I get blown out like consistently.
Yeah.
And my team seemed to be matching up with this coach really well, but then I end up losing 40-0, and I just don't understand why. Right. And that's the kind of challenges where it's like you work the whole season to get to that game, and then you get blown out and you're like, man, I got to try again next year. So I want to be able to consistently match up with top coaches, so I don't have to just play Sims all the time to win.
Yeah. One of the things I learned was in encountering that same scenario essentially is, there were games when I would be in it for the first quarter, or maybe, quarter and a half, second quarter. And then I could just see the other guy pour on the steam. And looking at the game play by play, I recognized it wasn't necessarily anything he did different. Any of his game plan script from first and second quarter, or the first half to the second half. It was more the fact that once my starters were out of the game, I was throwing nobodies at him, and I didn't have good quality backups. And I was always looking for that guy or those couple guys in the recruiting class that maybe weren't any good, but, they had great potential or really good work ethic. And I figure, they're way behind. They're way down on the recruiting list now. But, come year 3 and 4, they're going to be up there and be, studs. Well, a lot of times, I couldn't wait till they were, third year or seniors, because I had nobody other than maybe one guy in front of them that was worth a damn. And now I'm depending on these guys that haven't grown very much, and we're at the low end or the middle of the barrel. So it kind of made me change what I was looking for in recruiting as a approach to kind of getting not just depth, but quality depth.
Right.
And not looking to shoot for the studs every time, but looking to get some good quality backups and just take those studs when they came along and be able to get them engaged and have them with some solid backups. And one of the things that I was really messing up on is, looking, if I had a class of 12, for instance, I was looking for 6 studs. Give me these 6 studs and I'll be in good shape. And so what? I'll pick up, 6, worthless pieces of crap and maybe even a sim here or there, but I'll have these studs. Well, that proved to not work very well for me, because like I said, you've got 1 or 2 players and nobody to back them up, and those players get tired. And then, I took them out of the game. Unfortunately, I wasn't aware, like some of the coaches have presented now, that drop them down to 60 sub rate and leave them in the game and let them play. There's not a big drop off. Like I said, I haven't tested that for me personally, but if that stands to be the case, that may be one of the reasons that I lose those games that I'm initially in. And then it just seems to pull away, is because other coaches are not, taking their studs out of the game where I am to keep them fresh. And they're playing half the game where the other guy's got his in the entire game. And that can make a difference, So that's something I'm working on now to kind of look into, as far as how that substitution percentage affects how these guys are playing, especially, late in the second quarter, late in the fourth quarter, when a lot of the fatigue really takes place. Now, were you here when we did when we still had the injuries and stuff way back when?
I wasn't here for that. And I heard people talking about that. What is your opinion on that? Did you like the injuries? Do you like not having them?
Well, having the injuries made this game one step closer to reality, of course. But the fact that not all of the game was as close to reality in many aspects as we would like, that to me seemed like the one aspect of reality that we could do without. If the game really had more realistic situations, like, if I'm going to Chino, California to recruit a recruit, and there's 5 out there, it shouldn't cost me, the same to recruit 5 guys out there as it is to one. I shouldn't spend $10,000 to, go out there and recruit these guys when I'm already there. I can get those other guys and not cost a whole lot of money. So, that was one aspect that wasn't very realistic. and the other is there was no pipeline, so to speak. Like you have schools now where there are 2 or 3 high schools in a particular area where the coach just makes a phone call and the guy is interested. They've got a pipeline. You look at their real roster, and they've got 4 or 5 guys on their team from this one little podunk town in the middle of nowhere, Texas.
Right.
And that's because hey, my brother, my cousin, my friend went there. They've got that pipeline. We don't have that in this game, and a couple other things. So my view was, if we're not going to make more of it realistic, then I don't mind not having injuries, because the injuries really changed people's seasons. It changed people's careers. There were times when I had that stud quarterback that I was able to get, and sure enough, 10th game of the season, he comes down with a broken leg, and my season is shot. Or you get that stud linebacker that nobody can run on, and now all of a sudden your team's getting trounced because you can't rely on this one stud to keep things bottled up. And it really had a negative impact on a lot of the things that I was doing. And it just never seemed like anybody I played had injuries. I'm sure they did, but it just never seemed that way. And you'd get those notices, and that spoke to the durability too. That's a category it's worthless now, because the durability aspect was tied into the injuries. Right. So that rating, I don't even look at it, because we don't have the injuries anymore. So I can do without it. I don't mind it being gone. Definitely.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, this has been really cool talking to you, because I do a lot of podcasts and video chats like this for my job. I actually own a marketing agency, so I do a lot of things like this for work related, for advertising and things. But I never get to just kick back and shoot the shit with somebody about something that's fun for me, right? It's a whole simulated fantasy world. This is what I do, and I sit down. I want to chill out and drink a beer.
Yeah,
and,
exactly.
Now I'm on a podcast talking to another grown ass man who likes to do the same thing. It's really cool,
Well, if you want to see a funny show, you'll have to look at the first anniversary episode. And it was myself and Pee Weest. Let's see, it was Pee Weest, Shannon, I think Ed, me, may have been Hunters, Jay Hunters, I think, was on there. Normally these shows run about 45 minutes to an hour, generally. That one went well into 2 hours. And after about 45 minutes, we were all pretty much 6 sheets into the wind.
That's awesome.
They were giving me crap about drinking, what was it? Oh, caramel kissed vodka out of the bottle.
Right.
Yeah. So you'll have to go back and look at that anniversary episode. It'll be season 2, episode 1, maybe. That would make sense. I don't recall. You think I'd know these things, but I don't. But it's a fun episode to see, especially after about the first 45 minutes. It gets kind of crazy. I think we caught Shannon going to the bathroom and leaving the mic on and the lights off or something.
Oh my gosh, that's great. Yeah,
but it's really neat that you get to put a face with some of these coaches, and that was kind of one of my goals, was to introduce more personalized view of the coaches when I originally started the podcast, which was the first season. And that was primarily just the whole aspect of, we're not playing a computer, we're playing another human. So here's this human, here's about this human, here's what he or she looks like, here's what he or she likes, and some of the things they do. And, we've even had the creator of this game on first couple episodes of this TTA show, TTATO. It was, been years ago now. But Tariq came on a couple shows with us, and we had some good insight with him and good fun. So, yeah, I encourage you and everybody else, if they haven't seen some of these, go back and look. And a lot of them are just the same thing. A couple guys, like you said, just with each other shooting the shit about a game that's, ones and zeros, X's and O's. Right. But some of them really provide some good insight. Some really good coaches have come on and provided some really good material. And I'm sure there's been quite a few folks that have been helped from the episodes, hopefully anyway, because that's what we try to do, is introduce the coaches and share the wisdom.
Yep. Well, I know I didn't share much tonight in terms of wisdom, but I do want to say that whoever sees this, like I really enjoy the game. I appreciate the competition. Love the message boards. You guys are so kind and helpful in there. I rarely see people get like nasty in there. Like you see some of these other message boards are like they put people down. It looks like everyone's really helpful in this world, because we're all just here trying to have some fun,
Yeah, absolutely. And there are some that do it just out of being mischievous. We've I don't want to call them trolls, but there are a couple that
right.
get on the board when things get quiet, and I can usually figure, okay, another day or two, so and so is going to show up and kick sand in somebody's face just to get the boards riled up, and I'll get involved in some of that aspect myself, but never intentionally to piss anybody off. It's just more to present a different side of a story or a different side of the round ball. You never know
right.
who's right, who's wrong. Everybody plays the game different experiences, different expectations. But yeah, it's a good family network out there, and has been for many, many years, and I enjoy it. And hopefully this format brings some of that to the forefront as well, because I've made a lot of good friends, or people that I can call my friends on this format, and I really enjoy that part of it.
It's great. Well, hey, thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate it. Appreciate the hospitality.
Well, next time, we'll have to, like I said, we'll have to get your other two on there, especially after they've been playing much better than you.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what, my little girl is real good. I mean, she's real good, and she gets real mad if she doesn't win by enough points. Like a win's not good enough for her. She's like, I only won by 50 today. No.
Yeah. Wow. Well, we appreciate you coming on. Look forward to doing it again in the future, and tell them I said good luck the rest of the way.
All right, brother. Have a good weekend.
All right. We'll talk to you later.
Okay, bye.